Naresh, let me first come to you. Nifty Bank, it's the monthly expiry today as far as the financials are concerned. Talk to me about what's your view as to what's the way forward for the private banking versus the PSU banks?
So we've had a tight range today, but in terms of comparison, private banks look better. They were underperformed for quite some time. And now we've started seeing relative outperformance. So when we look at a private bank to the PSU bank ratio, that has started turning for the first time after 2021. A lot of names in the private banking side, at least the large ones, have come back to their 52-week highs, very close to making those 52-week highs. So for the short term, it's very clear that private banks could outperform the PSU banks.
Private banks to outperform the PSU banks, but in terms of the other internals of the market, it is some of the select other PSUs which are doing quite well, Kunal. A Power Grid, a NTPC. These are some of the stocks which are in focus. What's the take there? And also let's bring in the other, oil and gas names in ONGC and GAIL. They are trending a bit differently today.
So yeah, I think NTPC is looking very attractive. That's a chart which over the last few days has been showing signs of strength. And looking at the way the stock has given a breakout about the 420 plus mark, looks like that the stock is getting ready for a 450 plus kind of a breakout move over the next couple of days. ONGC, I think that's a chart again which has come back into a retracement mode. I think closer to 300 levels could be a very good entry point. The stock is retraced back towards its 200-day moving average. Power Grid, I think, has been one of the very silent movers and more consistent in terms of price performance. And the stock, even in the last 2-3 weeks, I think has seen consistent upside for itself. So very slow, gradual up moves for these stocks, but then it's building up when you look at this on the longer term play.
Right, okay, that's a couple of the energy names and that's being talked about. Let me welcome on board Chakri Lokpriya as well. Chakri, hi, afternoon. What's the take on the market right now? Tread with a little bit of caution, or would you say, if you had been sitting on cash, right now is, a good time as any to start deploying that?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I think it is a good time to buy. The only thing is, as far as the PSU banks, there are a couple of headwinds. One is, of course, the Vodafone 100,000, 1 lakh crore worth of loans, they'll have to run to the banks. And usually it's the PSU bank. Second is the mining, the mining fine placed by the Supreme Court. So that also could impact the PSU bank. So until there is some amount of clarity, I think these PSU banks will tread water a little bit. On the other hand, companies like HDFC Bank are, in particular, realizing that they need to bring down their mismatches, which we've been talking about for a long time, mismatch of loan deposit ratios. So if that happens, that is, if they manage to sell maybe, let's say, about 5% of their loan book, then things will start looking up. Now, partly in anticipation of that, these banks can do well. And the third and final point is interest rate cuts by RBI following the US will also act as a catalyst for banks.
So that's a take on banks. But what's the view, Chakri, when it comes to FMCG? UBS today downgraded Dabur. That's down 4-5%. The entire story that we were building about a rural recovery, is it getting undone?
I'd rather buy a media company like PVR, INOX. People go out, watch the movies, try to go and buy a Coldplay ticket. Those are the things which kind of are working, rather than in FMCG where there'll be the seasonal recovery. So we don't see any volume increases coming in the pure FMCG. So I think it's this low ticket, like for example, PVR, INOX. Going to the movies is not a high ticket item. So, and we're going to the festive season. Those are the companies which will do well.
Argue whether it's a high ticket item or not, because sometimes some of these ticket prices as far as PVR is concerned is as high as $1,000-$2,000 for a movie on a weekend. So not really sure, and especially the ticket prices for the likes of Coldplay, not even getting there.
Well, the Nifty, of course, is a lot more somber, as is the rest of the globe. Even if you look at the US futures right now, for instance, they're absolutely quiet after hitting a life high, both on the Dow as well as the S&P overnight. Similar is the picture with the European markets as well. In fact, it's a 0.5% cut that you're seeing for the DAX right now. FTSE flat, 0.5% lower for the CAC. FTSE MIB as well, trailing a little bit soft as we speak. And that was exactly how Asia as well panned out. It's pretty mixed across the board with both Japan as well as Australia closing in just mildly soft. Hong Kong and Shanghai, of course, has seen a much bigger move, so to speak. But Kunal, where is it that leadership is going to come in from? And you think in the next lap, if we were to build on to 26K, it'll have to be banks which will do the heavy lifting?
Yeah, I think banks should take a major chunk of that heavy lifting, and within banks also, I think it's the private sector banking names which have been doing very well. And it still seems, like the steam is not, off for many of these names, because when you look at the likes of ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, and today I think we've seen Axis Bank outperforming or showing signs of strength relatively. I think these three names, and add to that Kotak Bank, I think these 3-4 names have shown signs of very strong resilience, at to the point that now in the last 4-5 days, when the banking move start to get a lot more positive or on the upside, you're seeing PSU banking stocks just about getting into a zone. They've underperforming, but they're not going to a major kind of a correction like what we were seeing over the last 2-3 months. So which means that the markets could get back into a tilt where the private sector banks can stand to outperform. That divergence would continue between the private sector and the PSU names, but the outperformance relatively for the banking stocks on the upside of the bank Nifty as an index should continue. And add to the fact that what we are seeing also is emergence of other sectors like the real estate sectors. The Nifty Realty Index has made a very strong comeback. You've seen the metal stocks commodity theme over the last few days. That's also made a very strong trending move. So that indicates that we are getting into that zone where the risk on appetite is coming back. And when that happens, generally these 3 high beta sectors or rate sensitives, we call them typically banks, real estate as well as metals. I think these stocks, they tend to do very well.
Okay, point taken. So private banking names it is. But Chakri, this dip that we are seeing on the likes of East My Trip, Policy Bazaar for the last couple of days, is this a buying opportunity or they are lower for a reason?
I think Make My Trip will stay away from. They want to, I think, get into electric cars or electric buses. It's a difficult thing to do. It's the stock re-rated a little bit, but then I think it pulled off. So Make My Trip, the margins are not holding up. Valuations are up there. We'll stay away. And Policy Bazaar, I guess they just don't have the margins there in that business. The whole insurance sector is under problems, and what they pay back to Policy Bazaars is even lower.
Having the right enough of margins as far as PB FinTech is concerned. But Naresh, what's the view coming in on a Z Entertainment, which is suddenly perking up quite nicely, and HEG as well?
So Z, over the last many months, every time it has come to that 120, 125 mark, has bounced back to 145, 150. Till the time it doesn't sustain above the 145, 150 mark, it still looks like a downward trend. So would wait out for some more time. HEG, on the other hand, is shaping up for a longer term breakout eventually if it happens. And we are seeing Graphite India also do well. It has a lot of resistance around the 2600, 2700 mark in that band. So for now, would wait for a dip and then maybe look at it.
Right. Okay. Those are some of the interesting, buzzing stocks that one is seeing currently in trade. Other than that, of course, IEX continues to languish. About a 3.5% dip is what that stock is currently settling in at. There's LIC Housing Finance also lower by about 3%. There's Dabur, like Anisha just flagged off. That, of course, is languishing. It's down about nearly 5% as we speak right now. So these are a bunch of names. There's BEL2. It's going to be trading on the Nifty 50 come September 30th. That's the end of this month in just a few days from now. And this is going to be the first defense PSU, by the way, to be included in the index. Today, of course, it's languishing about 1.5%. But Chakri, we were just analyzing data. And while most of these, defense PSUs in particular have fallen off from their 52-week highs, they've also risen from the recent lows. About 9 to 10% across the board is the kind of recovery that you've seen. Do you think money would make its way and one would begin averaging out in some of these beaten down names?
If you look at, in particular, Bharat Electronics, the order flow continues to be strong. One of the things which happen, and its valuations are okay. And now that it's getting into the Nifty, there would be some amount of additional flow. So I think the stock will hold up. But in general, what's happening to defense, we believe, is after the election, there was a lull or whether there would be order flow or not. But recent order wins by various defense companies is giving back the confidence that, yes, order flow will continue. But meanwhile, these stocks are expensive, so I wouldn't really venture into them now.
Kunal, what's what's your take though? Because you were of the view that one should average in now and start buying this dip, right?
Yeah, I think for BEL, HAL, it's a very good zone where one could look to buy. So, both in terms of price correction, we looked at the last 2-3 years of the data for these stocks, and on an average, these stocks have corrected by 30-35%, 37% to be precise, for these stocks. And I think what we've seen in the last 3-4 months is that these stocks have corrected that 30% retracement for themselves. So maybe 4-5% here or there, that could be a trade which these stocks may swing into. But when we look at this as an opportunity and looking at the previous such opportunities where these stocks corrected and completed that mean reversion phase, I think this could be a very good entry point for stocks like BEL, HAL, maybe an averaging zone for someone who's bought at higher levels.
Okay, so that's a take coming in on BEL. But it seems like there's fresh opportunity brewing as far as the real estate sector as well as the power sector is concerned. For real estate, we did speak with Minister Piyush Goyal earlier, and he talked about how there's not only potential back home, but countries like Australia, etc., real estate players from India can play a large role. And as far as the power sector is concerned, we also have that news coming in that the National Electricity Plan is expected to be implemented over the next 15 days itself. We recently had an initiation note coming in from Motilal Oswal as well. Yesterday, Power Grid was up. Today, it's up, and NTPC too is following suit. Let's do one thing. First up, let's hear out what Minister Piyush Goyal had to say, and then we'll follow it up with what the Power Minister had to tell us.
We had 1,100 real estate developers of repute come down from India for a 3-day conference in Australia. They have been studying Sydney City for new technologies, emerging construction styles. And will you believe it? They are so super excited about the growth opportunity in India. They told me that they expect in the next 30 years to construct twice the number of buildings that all of India has today. So what was constructed in, I don't know, hundreds of years in India until today will be tripled in the next 30 years. Look at the huge opportunity for the entire ecosystem, whether it's steel, cement, furniture, carpets, electricals, electronics, air conditioning. The list just goes on and on.
इस नेशनल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्लान को विधिवत आने वाले 15 दिन के अंदर और इसका विधिवत लॉन्च भी करेंगे, इसकी घोषणा भी करेंगे। लेकिन उसके कुछ पहलू इसको मैं जरूर आपके सामने बताना चाहूँगा कि हमारे यहाँ अभी तक जो अनुमान लगाया गया कि हमारी पीक डिमांड ऑफ पावर ये 2030 तक 425 गीगावाट और 2032 तक 458 गीगावाट ये जो है हो जाएगी। तो इसको प्राप्त करने के लिए हमने पूरी अपनी योजना प्लानिंग बना ली है। नई प्लान के अंतर्गत हमने अपने जो ट्रांसमिशन नेटवर्क है इसको भी बढ़ाने की योजना बनाई है, जो 424 में अभी 2024 में यानी इस वर्ष तक 4.85 लाख सर्कल किलोमीटर ये हमारी लाइनें हैं और आने वाले 2032 में इनको बढ़ा करके 6.48 लाख सर्किट किलोमीटर इसको पूरा किया जाएगा।
Right, okay, that's the take coming in from some of the ministers. In the meantime, just looking at, some of the other buzzers in trade and, sure enough, IT has been a little bit of a languisher today. But let's just take stock of, what a Delta Corp has been up to, because the board has approved the demerger of its hospitality and real estate business. That stock got off to a good start and is holding on to a large part of its gains. About a 4.25% move, continues there. And then KC International, wherein there is a 4,500 crore rupee board approval coming in for its QIP. The approved QIP floor price is at about a 5% discount to its current market price, 1,015 now on KEC International as we speak right now. Chakri, what about the entire capex and infra theme? Much the flavor all through, a large part of last year as well as this year. And then, of course, the flavor turned to defense, EMS, and now, semiconductors, the new energy theme, etc. But where is it that you are largely standing when it comes to the capex theme?
The energy theme, we made money if you bought it last year. We will make money. I think if you buy it this year again, NTPC, Power Grid, if you look at the kind of numbers, India needs to add power equivalent to the entire what EU has over the next few years, 3 or 4, 5 years. To do that, which means all these companies, NTPC, Power Grid, now transmission is going to become a far more complex mechanism because you have power from various sources, hydro, solar, thermal, all kinds of power, which means the grid needs to be smart enough to understand. Power grid is like the one nation, one grid kind of a big grid. So you'll see phenomenal growth. NTPC, same reason, green energy will double and triple and again double over the next 10 odd years. So the numbers are huge. So even if they fulfill very small portion of it, still they will be very profitable investments.
Right, okay. Chakri, we'll let you go on that note. Good to have you on the show as always with your thoughts in. Let's take a very quick break on that note. We will, of course, take in the closing trades as well. Before that, Naresh, let's have your ideas.
So that would be a buy on Axis Bank that has shown relative strength today in the banking space. New swing high here, would expect it to continue towards 1300 levels in the near term.
Kunal, what about your closing strategies?
So I'll go with the contraband TCS, the stock which has fallen down, I think 10% approximately in the last 1 week or so. So I think at current levels, expecting the stock to bounce by at least 2 to 3 percentage points from current levels.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.